Number one is the battery. This is what runs the whole car and keeps the whole car alive, with the alternator as well. The alternator is attached to a belt, and as the engine spins the alternator with that belt, it actually replenishes the battery with power. So there's a positive and a negative side. This keeps the whole car alive and charged by the alternator. This connects to the starter, to the alternator, to various electrical systems in the car. This is the negative side, which are grounds. Normally they're black, not red, but I only had red wire. So don't get used to that. Continuing along, we have the air intake. The engine works off air, it breathes air in and out. The exhaust obviously is air. So we have the intake coming in here, throttle body. This controls how much air can go in and out by literally a mechanical plate. Full throttle is like this, idle is like this, where barely any air can get past the plate. And then you go full throttle and it fully opens it. This is the intake manifold. The air flows through the intake manifold into the actual combustion chambers underneath here. These are fuel injectors, 4 fuel injectors that squirt fuel coming from here. Moving on, we have part of the cooling system. It's called the coolant overflow expansion tank. We have many hoses running to it. Kind of just holds the coolant, and I think in case of overheating, more will get sent here. But basically, it's just part of the cooling system, and yeah, you're never open that when it's really hot. Never open any of the cooling system when it's really hot. Next, we have the exhaust manifold. This is a metal piece. This one actually has a heat shield on it, so it heats up faster. The exhaust manifold allows the air to escape the engine, and this one actually goes straight down underneath the car and to the back. This right here is called the thermostat housing. This is part of the cooling system. It holds the thermostat, which is a mechanical valve based off temperature that'll open and close based off the heat of the coolant. So when the car is just starting, only coolant's going through like this in the heater core. And then once it gets hot enough, the thermostat will slowly start opening and bleeding off coolant into the radiator through this big hose here. And yeah, it's the thermostat housing. These are our spark plug wires. And I believe this car has maybe 1 ignition coil. I'm not exactly sure. Newer cars don't have spark plug wires. They have coil on plug, it's called, where there's ignition coils you can remove. Coming to this side, this is the power steering pump, and farther down there we have the AC compressor, and then again we have the alternator, and the crankshaft pulley is crammed in between there. This is where all the belts are running, and if your belt breaks, you're not going to have an alternator, a water pump as well, which is on this side, AC or power steering. So that's why that belt is really important. Underneath here are the cam gears and a timing belt connecting the engine in time. If your timing belt breaks, the whole engine breaks and it's toast. So that's really important, even though you can't see it right now. This is our power steering fluid reservoir. You can check how much fluid you have in here. You can check your coolant visually from here. We have a dipstick which checks the oil level. Usually you scrape it off with the rag, but the car has been sitting, so it's okay. This is the valve cover. This holds the camshafts and all the valve gear under there. Keeps the oil from going everywhere, essentially. Back here we have some of the evap system. These are all for, I think, evaporative emissions. You can see we have like a hose connecting to the intake. So it's not actually too complicated. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. You can learn more and more about each piece. But basically it's a battery, an alternator, a starter, spark plugs, an intake, air goes in and out, and a cooling system to keep it cool. Plus oil to keep it cool and make sure everything is running smoothly. That's pretty much all you have to worry about on the engine, at least terminology wise in the beginning. Battery, intake, valve cover, expansion tank, power steering fluid reservoir, intake manifold, fuel injectors, fuel rail, serpentine belt, alternator, crank pulley, AC compressor, power steering fluid pump, dipstick, radiator hoses, coolant thermostat housing, ignition coils and or spark plug wires. This car is front wheel drive. It's braced up here by this mount, and underneath the car is a third mount to hold the whole engine in place.